After a day full of pain and suffering and unbridled anger, a smile has come across my face in the form of one poncho-less man. That poncho-less man used to have a poncho, and now I don't have access to his events because I forgot I switched accounts, and this is not my Cal Kestis account. So we're doing it fucking live, and we're doing it without Cal Kestis because I am too lazy to switch BlueStacks accounts. Cal Kestis kind of fucked up, I'm not going to lie, in a good way. He is apparently not an unaligned Force user, which apparently is a big distinction. He is, in fact, a Jedi. Oh my god, there he is. He's pretty fucked up. Obviously, a lot of credence has been paid. I don't even know if I used that word right. I'm just ridiculously tired. He's good with JML, obviously. There's been talks, and by talks, I mean I've been thinking to myself and like stroking various things, thinking about how amazing JML is now. Unfortunately, I don't have Cal Kestis on the main account, which is very sad. But we're seeing things like, Jabba. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't seen a ton of Jabba footage. We're beating JMK. We're being able to deal with Sith, but Sith really aren't going to be a huge deal when you have a second lifter for JML. I mean, JMK or JML, Jedi Knight Luke, and what are people are calling him JKCK or some bullshit like that. I'm just going to call him Jedi Cal because I feel like that's a lot easier to say than JKCK or whatever people have been saying. But it brings into question the validity of the arguably the most sexy galactic legend of all time, mostly because I'm a big DILF man myself. But it's been no secret that he's been a little bit obscure in the higher ranks. Like, obviously, if you're sub Kyber 2, having JML is fantastic. He beats most things. Struggles against Malgus, obviously, and can't really beat JMK Cat very well just because you don't have the damage output to kind of get around, especially GK, but then whittle down Cat to prevent the extra damage, and then yada, yada, yada. With proper relics and a good datacron and good strategy and a relatively bad JMK team, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But now with Cal Kestis, you can put together some pretty fucked up JML comps. Obviously, he also plugs into Rey, and that's been working really well. The success rate in GAC, or not GAC, the success rate in testing has been pretty high. GLs are easier to test with. Characters that you plug in with GLs are a little bit easier to test with because there's not a ton of Omicrons that kind of play a huge role in how GLs work. So a lot of just normal testing versus datacron testing versus all that stuff is relatively accurate when it comes to how GL teams are going to be kind of shaken up. What does this mean for the... We'll go in stages. Early game players, what does this mean? Absolutely nothing. I mean, you're not going to have Cal Kestis. Mid-game players, what does this mean? You should probably start farming Cal Kestis 3 months from now. He'll be back in 6 months. It takes you 3 months to farm him. You get him up. You have a Cal Kestis. You're happy. End-game players, I mean, you're spending money on everything anyway, so it doesn't really change anything. It's just another thing for you to spend money on. But if you do have Cal, or you're thinking about getting Cal, I think it seriously adds an absolutely fuck ton of viability to the JML, to the Rays of the world. It just gives you more flexibility. Having that, yes, it's nice to have that like prevention of fear and cooldown reduction and stuff like that, so maybe you can not instantly lose to a Malgus team if someone were to save Malgus on offense and you put JML on defense, or more realistically, they place Malgus on defense and you save JML for offense. But having another dedicated JMK counter, because they're few and far between, is going to be very nice, because a lot of times, at least in my grand arenas, JML is the only... I mean, I only have 2 GLs, so like I save JML for offense and I put JMK on defense. And I frequently find myself like taking Luke off, Jedi Knight Luke off, full autoing like an SLKR, using Jedi Knight Luke as a lead or under Revan for some other random counter and kind of splitting that team up. And then kind of, having to place a tough defense and not worrying about the Kenobi or two-shotting the Kenobi with a JML intro and then cleaning up after that. After I kill Cat, I just like clean up with gas or something like that if I've saved gas or offense. But now I have a dedicated, or I would if I had Cal. Now there is the potential to kind of have that dedicated counter. Now, obviously, we're going to get a new Galactic Legend soon, and it remains to be seen Mr. Coast de la Mal, if he's going to be the Conquest character and kind of what team he's going to bump up. Is there going to be a new Backbone team? How's the new jail going to play into it? Is there going to be a new Backbone character associated with the farm of the jail, like Jedi Knight Luke for JML? That's going to be super important. There's still a lot of stuff up in the air right now, and I think it's kind of nice that there's going to be like I guess it's probably a 6-month break in between Cals, because he does shake up a lot of stuff, and it's going to be kind of one of those moments where there's so much going on all at the same time that you could get overwhelmed, and I feel like he would probably fall into obscurity for a lot of people. But for those of you guys who are wondering, is this a character that I should start passively farming towards for that next 6-month drop? If you have Ray or JML already, the answer is absolutely yes. I mean, Gear 12 Rex, you just Gear 12 them and then, take Cal up, or you can relic the OG Cal and the Jedi Cal, and you can put OG Cal with Ray and Jedi Cal with JML and boost both of your Galactic Legend teams and be much better for it. If you don't have JML, I mean, one of the things that I found really interesting is when you're farming, there's like chains that you can kind of like hop back and forth from, like strings of farms that like really, really work well together. A terrible example is like farming C into Executor, or Executor into C. Like there's no real relation between those two characters, but people do it all the time. And that's not to say Executor is bad, because you should farm Executor early. I'm saying that C chortles balls. But now there's this big rotation that's been popping up over the last year or so, where it's like you farm Jedi Knight Luke, and depending on how strong your defensive Galactic Legends are versus how strong your ships are, you can go a number of ways. You can go Jedi Knight Luke into JML into Profundity into Jabba. You can go Jedi Knight Luke into, Jabba into Profundity into JML. Like you can kind of mix and match. And now we're just adding in another like backbone level character to where you can go Jedi Knight Luke, you can go Jedi Knight Luke, JML, Cal, Jabba, Profundity, or any combination of that. And dramatically increase the viability, because for a long time it was like, you go Jedi Knight Luke, do you go into a GL and then into Profundity, or do you go Jedi Knight Luke into Profundity into a GL? And whatever you choose, you're then presented with, do I go for JML or do I go for Jabba? And the answer originally, before Jabba existed, was obviously JML, because there wasn't anything else. And then Jabba came out, and it's like, well, Jabba is much stronger than JML. There's a high likelihood that for a lot of accounts, it probably makes more sense to have a stronger defensive Galactic Legend, depending on what your roster looks like, of course, because these all change, which is why everyone and their mom wants a roster review, because every roster is different, and general advice needs to be tuned to what your specific account looks like. But it was leaning so far in the direction of Jabba, there was just not a lot of JMLs coming out. But now that Cal is out, and he's a relatively easy farm, it's leaning more in the direction of you can pick a offensive GL in JML or a defensive GL in Jabba. And it really just depends what your roster looks like still, but at least you give more flexibility, more viability to both sides of that tree, so that people who had JML and felt like, oh my God, I missed out, I don't have Jabba, are now saying like, hey, I can pick up Cal and I'll have a JMK counter. It'll fuck up pretty much anything else. I could set it on defense and not need to worry about it. I'll be in a good spot. So kind of strengthening that middle part. Thank you as always to our sponsors. We're going to have, oh my God, I just played an ad on accident. I meant to do this. We have a graphic coming out for this, and I'll do this whole thing, and Cal actually makes this interesting and changes this somehow. So perfect time to kind of update the farming guide and stuff. Like, holy shit, do I have a fucking mustache right now? Did I forget to, oh shit, I forgot to shave my mustache. That's kind of weird.